Good morning, folks. Welcome to the webinar today. Appreciate you joining the Center for Technical Development for our learning series of webinars. For those who are in the attendee box, if you could do me a favor and just type something in the questions box so I know that you can see me, so that you can see our welcome to the webinar screen. That would just let me know that everybody is seeing the technology, that things are working. Great. All right. I'm seeing some things pop up into that question box. Thank you, everybody. So before we get started on the webinar, this is our second part of this series on COMET Farm and COMET Planner tools from NRCS. So before we get started on that, just a couple things for the webinar. If you have a question as we go along, please type your question into the questions box, as many of you just did, to figure out how that works. You can also raise your hand. I can unmute you and we can get your question answered that way. So you've got two ways to ask questions today. And as we go along, if you have a question as it comes up, please put it in the questions box. We'll moderate that all along the way, and or at the end, we'll have plenty of Q&A time for you to ask questions about the tool and scenarios, etc. If you were with us at the first part of this webinar series, that Haley, who will be our presenter again today, who you can see on the screen, she presented on the Cropland part of the tool and also did a lot of background on that. So hopefully you were able to catch that. If you were not able to catch that, I'm hoping that you have the time to go back. You can find that on the CTD website under training events. If you scroll down to training, webinar archive and recordings, you can find not only a link to that video, but a lot of great supporting links and tools and the slide set, etc., that are up here for you. So a lot of great follow-up information that was provided. So please feel free to go back to that as needed. Also, at the top of our training page under CTD webinars and web training, you can also see all of the great webinars that we've got coming up here soon. So a lot of things coming up for you guys. For those on today's webinar, the webinar in February on the NRCS waste calc spreadsheet training might be of real interest to you guys. So that might be a great one for you as well to catch up in February. So with that, I do want to greatly thank Hallie for being with us today and for sharing the farmstead part of this tool with us and going over all those elements. I do want to also thank NRCS for providing the time today for this and supporting this webinar with us. This is a tool that NRCS developed with Colorado State University to better assist folks like us, planners, in doing carbon planning with farms. And this is a hot topic for all of us now and into the future, and a great resource that we've got today to get training on what that tool is and how to properly use it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Haley, and you can take it away. Thank you so much.
Sorry, sounds great. Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm going to share my screen, I think, maybe. All right.
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. Okie dokie. All right, you guys can see my screen okay? I'll put up that back into, so I guess you guys can see my face now. So sorry about last week. My video camera wasn't working, but now I'm gonna pause my video after this introduction, but I am Haley Nagel from COMET Farms team at CSU, and I am gonna pause the video because I don't want my bandwidth to cause any issues while I'm presenting. And then I'm going to go back to that video. There we go. All right, Nicole, can you see the screen okay with the presentation?
I'm still seeing your background to your computer. So let's try that again. Why don't, unless we've got a little bit of a lag.
Okay, I might have moved it to the wrong screen.
Yeah.
Oh no, I had you on pause. Whoops, I was practicing out the pause button and then I forgot about it.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I can see your presentation just fine now.
Okay, awesome. That sounds great. And okie dokie. All right, so again, I am Haley Nagel from the Comet Farm team, and I am the Outreach and Education Specialist here at Colorado State University. And I work in the research group led by Dr. Keith Kostian. And in today's presentation, we're going to look specifically at the conservation planning and greenhouse gas mitigation tools for animal agriculture. And with time permitting, which I think there might be, I can give you a quick demonstration of the COMET energy tool as well. There we go. So I'm presenting on behalf of my team here on the left-hand side, and we wanted to extend a special thanks, like Nicole said, to NRCS and the Climate Change Office at USDA for their continued support for the development and the use of the COMET tools. And additional support and funding came from smaller state agencies and private donors there on the right. And you might think that this presentation looks a little bit familiar as the one from last week. So we're going to start with just a quick reminder of some COMET tools background information before I dive into the animal agriculture demonstration. So the COMET tools, both COMET Planner and COMET Farm, are web-based greenhouse gas inventory tools for land-based systems, and they're both designed for conservation scenario analysis. And you can access the both of these sites through the URLs here, so comet-planner.com and comet-farm.com. If you do wish to enter or to go to the COMET Energy tool, which I will show you at the end of the presentation, you can access that directly through the COMET Farm site, which I will demonstrate after the Animal Ag module demonstration. And so just a quick reminder, and if you missed last week's presentation, like Nicole mentioned, that recording is on your website, but just a quick review of the calculation methods that are behind the scenes. These are, so COMET Farm is a modeling platform that implements over 40 different USDA sanctioned methods and models that have been peer reviewed. And so the computer models that are implemented here they simulate the greenhouse gas emissions that have been emitted within a defined entity, from manure to fertilizer to burning and other management events that you might do in an operation. So the soil-related ones, the soil-related emissions are calculated using the DACENT model. So this is the principal model from the COMET Farm cropland, pasture, orchard, vineyard demonstration that I showed last week. And accounting for animal agriculture, which I'm going to demonstrate today, is also available, and this is for different livestock, from cattle to bison, and they have different empirical models that are associated with these, as well as those associated with the forestry and agroforestry systems. So data is collected for the unique entity once, and to make it as user-friendly as possible, the data is collected that one time and then used to drive all those different models that are mentioned. And again, all of these methods are defined in USDA's quantifying greenhouse gas fluxes, what we call the Blue Book document, which is available on COMET Farm site and USDA site. And I can provide a link for that as well at the end of the presentation. So just a quick reminder on how COMET Farm works as a conservation scenario analysis. These tools are built to enter your historical management practices, and then you enter your baseline, so your current management practices, so what you are currently doing to your operation, and then what you would like to compare that to, so your change in management or your future scenario, your conservation practices, to compare the benefits relative to that baseline. And so COMET Planner and COMET Farm both do this, but I'd like to remind you that COMET Planner pulls from regional averages for a broad description of the conservation benefits, whereas COMET Farm is a more field to farm to field specific analysis. So you can make different parcels and compare smaller parcels, whereas COMET Planner, which I demonstrated at the end of the presentation last week, is pulling on those regional averages for a broader description of conservation benefits. So Do we have any questions up to this point before I jump into the animal ag demonstration?
Just a reminder for folks, if you do have a question, feel free to type it into that questions box. We'll moderate that. Okay, I'm not seeing any at the moment. Folks can also raise your hand if that's a little bit easier. Okay,
No.
perhaps none at the moment,
All
but
right.
if they come in, I'll be sure to bring them up for you.
All right. All right, so on my screen now, I'm showing you the Comet Farm homepage, and I'm going to minimize the GoToMeeting box here. And so this is, when you go to comet-farm.com, this is the first page that you will see. Because I already had this uploaded, you don't see a little window pop up, but when you first enter the Comet Farm site, a window will pop up that indicates all of the most recent updates. And so I'm going to be demonstrating a good bit of those new updates in this demonstration. And I would like to remind you that if you see this little help desk widget in the bottom right corner, if at any point in time in your Comet Farm journey that you happen to have a question pop up, this little help desk widget will follow you along on every page of Comet Farm and soon to be Comet Planner. And you can search in here for commonly asked questions. And if you still can't find your answer in these solution articles, you can contact us directly through this help desk widget, and I'll get back to you there. Another thing I'd like to point out, when you scroll down, that Blue Book methods document that I mentioned that has all of the equations and modeling and methods behind Comet Farm, you can access that directly through this little Blue Book button here. And then you can also access Comet Energy and Comet Planner directly through Comet Farm's site, which we will come back to that Comet Energy tool at the end. So to access our tool, you can either go from start using Comet Farm here, or you can go to the tool button in the top right corner. So I'm going to select start using our tool. And again, you can use Comet Farm without creating an account, but we would highly recommend that you do create an account, because while you can access all of the features of Comet Farm without the account, you cannot save any information for any of your projects unless you have an account. And so only you would be able to access your Comet Planner or Comet Farm information by creating an account. So it is nice that when you have multiple projects that you can go back and refer to them at any point in time if you do have an account. So I logged into my account, and I'm on the activities homepage. So any projects that you've already created will appear in this grayed out box. And we are going to create a demo project because I'm going to run you through the Animal Ag demo project. If you wanted to create a new project, you would select the button, scroll down just a little bit, and it says Create New Project. So I'm going to go to Create Demo Project, and I'm going to demonstrate the Animal Ag dairy operation first, and then I will show a new feature for all of the Animal Ag, but I'll show it on the beef operation there. So I'm going to create that. And there we go. So our new project is at the bottom here. And if you wanted to delete your project, you can select delete here. You can rename it there if you'd like. Now, because this is a demonstration project, our accounting activity is already selected for us here. But if you were creating a new project, you would select which type of accounting you'd like to do. So cropland, animal ag, agroforestry, or forestry. You can do as many as you'd like all together, or you can just do one, which is what we are going to show now with the animal ag. So I'm going to define my activities on any of the demonstration projects. And if you participated last week on the Cropland, you also noticed some pop-up windows. On any of the demo projects, a pop-up window will just give you some background information on where we got the data put into our demonstration projects. This is from Southern California, and your first task in Animal Ag is to enter your property location and your preferred units of measurement, which I'm going to select Save and Continue. And then they would like to let you know that there are 180 cows, dairy milk, 180 cows with a total population of over 350 animals. So after you've defined your location, you're going to select your animal type. So you can select from various different types of cattle, poultry, sheep, swine, and other, where you have the bison and the goats here. So this is where you can select as many animal categories as you'd like. And if you, at any point in time, you are confused or you have not sure how Comet Farm defines each of these guys, there is a little blue question mark in the top next to select animal types. And a pop-up window will show you how Comet Farm defines each of these animal types. So we have 3 animal types selected: the dairy dry cows, dairy heifer replacements, and dairy lactating cows. So at the bottom, if you have used Comet Farm before, this is a new feature, the set baseline period. I'm going to run through the legacy tool first, and then I will go back and demonstrate what this baseline period means and how to change it. So to access the legacy tool, if you've used Comet Farm, this would be what you've used in the past. So I'm just going to select Save and Continue, and we will come back to set baseline for another project. So once you've defined your animal types, so that was your animal categories, we're going to go to the first panel, which is our animal characteristic. As you are moving through Comet Farm in here, these little navigation maps will show you which section you are on. And it'll either be highlighted in blue, there'll be a little blue dot above the section or below the section, and you'll know which animal category you are working on when it is also highlighted in blue with this little green check mark. So it's important to make note of which animal category you're entering data for, especially if you have multiple animal types here. That way we don't get confused. When you enter Comet Farm Animal Ag for the first time, so if you're creating a new project, you will only see a baseline scenario here. So your first scenario will always be your baseline in Animal Ag. We have a second scenario here because it's the demo project, but I will show you how to add new scenarios too once we get to that point. So our first page for animal characteristics is to add different herds. So Comet Farm defines herds as animals in the same category, but those with different diets, their manure is handled differently, or their housing is handled differently. So our animal categories over here are not technically defined as different herds. Herds have to be within the same category type. So you can add additional herds by selecting the little blue plus button, and you can get rid of the herds that you added by selecting the X. You can rename them, whatever you'd like to rename them. For this demonstration project, we're only going to have 1 herd for the dairy heifer replacements here. And more often than not, we find that most people do not have additional herds, so all of their animals in the same category are managed similarly. So if you have any additional questions about herds, I can answer those as well. So we're going to select Save and Continue. If you notice, we are still on the dairy heifer replacements for this 1 herd. Here you're going to enter your animal characteristics, so how many animals of this particular animal category that you have per year and where you house them. So we've entered 85. This was already populated for the demo project. If you wanted to have, if you had a different number in each of these, you could put those in there as well. This little arrow on the paper button, that will help you to limit your data entry. So you could just enter 85 here, and it would populate all of the rest of the months there. Then you're going to enter your daily feed intake and your average live body weight, and select Save and Continue. After the animal details page, depending on what type of animal you have selected, the questions that are asked here will vary depending on your animal type and category within that animal type. So our first page, our third page is types of feed. And so here you will enter the types of feed that you are feeding your cattle, and you can have this vary by month by selecting your boxes next to here. So if you are starting a new project, this would appear blank on here, and the little button underneath completed will say no because you haven't entered any data yet. But for the demo project, this is already entered. So for example, if you were starting from scratch and you wanted them all to be fed the same thing, you could select the top button, which means that whatever food you enter down below is going to populate all of the months. Then you have an exhaustive list of types of feed that you could enter, and then category within that types of feed, and then it would be added to your selections list here. You would confirm your selections, and then you would let us know what percentage of the feed each of those feed types makes up. And if it doesn't add up to 100, COMET Farm will flag you. So if I bring this down just a little bit, it'll flag you to let you know that you are not at 100%. And then you would select done and confirm your feed types. Scroll back up to the top and they would be populated in this table at the top here. So once you have populated all of the feed types for all of your months, then you can go down to the bottom, back down to the bottom and select save and continue to move on to your housing details. So our housing details, this page has been populated based off of your selection choice. If you can see, it's a little bit faded out, but it says roofed facility, what we picked on the very first page. And our choices here are determined based off of that first choice of roof facility. Then you can decide how our manure is handled and then the size of the barn floor here. And again, if you have a question, sometimes actually when people ask a lot of the same questions, like what does a pit storage mean, that's when we add these little blue question marks in here to help you determine which is your best choice for, in this case, manure handling. So we're going to select save and continue. And we're moving on to our manure system types. So here you'll decide your manure system type, and whatever you decide here is also going to influence your next page of manure details. So we determined our primary solid treatment is composting, and I would just like to point out that the primary liquid treatment here is the anaerobic lagoon, which we are going to be modifying in our future scenario. So then I select save and continue, and we enter the manure system details. And if you notice, we have a section for composting and anaerobic lagoon here because we decided that on the previous page. So you enter the details specific for the storage tanks here, and then we select save and continue to move on to our manure details page. So this page is populated here, one, because it's a demo project, but two, COMET Farm is actually going to populate this page with default values for your given region. So if you remember back on the very first page, when you entered your property location, you were tying your project to that specific location, and COMET Farm is pulling on regional data for this page. But if you happen to have lab data on your average nitrogen content of the manure per month and you want to go ahead and modify these, you can do that as well. You can also modify your dry manure produced per head per day. So at this point, if you notice, we are on the last page of manure details. So that is our last page of entering details for our dairy heifer replacements, which is our first animal category here. So I'm going to select save and continue. So if you notice that we only entered data for the very first category, I'm going to select close here because we don't want to move on to our next category yet, because when you are creating a new project and if you have more than one animal category, you need to make sure that you go back and you enter details for your other categories as well. This data is already entered because this is the Animal Ag Demo project, but if you were creating a new project, this would all be blank as well. So all of this data is already entered for these guys for the Animal Ag project. So I'm going to go skip ahead to the manure details page, that last page of entering animal details. And I'm going to select save and continue here. So once you do this, you have the option to create a new scenario. So this is similar to the future scenario that I demonstrated in the Cropland module last week. And so you have the opportunity to create a new scenario, and you can also copy your management data from your any other scenario. So if you had multiple scenarios, you could copy the data that you had from an additional scenario. This would come in handy if you were changing maybe one or two things. So you could copy data from the baseline and then go make your one modification on your future scenario. So we are actually going to not create a new scenario here because it's already created for this project. So I'm just going to skip ahead to that scenario here. And so for our future scenario for the Animal Ag project here is they are switching to an anaerobic digester. So they kept everything else the same with the exception of our manure system types. So your next scenario page is going to look identical in terms of in terms of data entry for your animal characteristics. You're going to see the same exact pane. You're going to enter things the same exact way, and you're just going to make your modification of what you would like to compare your baseline to here. So everything stayed the same here with the exception of our manure system details, which we kept composting as our primary solid treatment, but we switched our primary liquid treatment to an anaerobic digester, which means because we changed this page, our following page on manure system details is also going to change. And so this is now updated to our anaerobic digester, the choice from the previous page, and you can select your type from the anaerobic digester choices here. And so once I get to the last page here, remember you have only finished entering data for one of your animal categories. So before you proceed to either the report or another future scenario, you need to make sure that you go back and enter your data for your other animal category types here as well. So I'm going to skip ahead to the end because all this data is already entered for our second herd, being the demo project, or second animal category, excuse me, for the demonstration project. And once you hit the last page here, you can select Save and Continue, and you'll be prompted with that window again to either continue to the report, which we're going to do. You can also create a new scenario for up to 10 different scenarios. But remember, the more scenarios you have, the longer it will take to get your report, anywhere from maybe 30 seconds to, we've seen some people with very complicated projects take up to 30 minutes to get the report. Or if you select Close, then you can go back and edit any data from this scenario as well. So I'm going to select Continue to the report. And similar to the Cropland project, the report out is given in either a tabular report here, or it is given in a graphical report by animal category type here. So I'd like to, I'll go ahead and explain this, and then we can pause for questions on this one. So for these, we've added this, actually I think since our last talk, we've added a little plus button next to here that just indicates that you can double click on here to show your source and subsource categories. So not just emissions per animal category and per animal type, but you can see methane and different enteric emissions, methane related to housing and composting, and nitrous oxide emissions. If you also notice, there is a little tiny calculator right next to each of the subsource categories, which breaks down the equation that was used to find each of those emissions. I would like to remind you that emissions here are given in a CO2 equivalent, which means because each of these greenhouse gases have a different global warming potential, we have provided our report in CO2 equivalent so you can compare the report out. And I would like to remind you that the green number here, which is a negative, is going to indicate a greenhouse gas emission reduction or an increase in carbon sequestration. And so our colored value here is going to be our change when you're comparing your baseline to your future scenario. In this case, it's the digester install here. And then so if I can make that go back down, there we go. And so it breaks it down by each animal category. If we had more than one herd, it would show the different herds underneath each of these types. And then it totals it up at the bottom for all of your animal types for one big number at the bottom. And similarly, if you go to the graphical report, we can break that down by animal category type. And of course, we have another fluke in our graph. We noticed you guys helped me find a bug in our code for our graph for the Cropland module, which was fixed, but now we're seeing another bug here. So I would recommend coming back and checking later on this week for the graphical report, but the tabular report seems to be A-okay now. A new feature for the animal ag is that you can actually download your detailed report here, which was not available up until the end of September. So if you guys have any questions on the animal ag, the like data entry, or on the report. Let me know if you guys have any questions so far before I move on to showing you some of the new features as well.
We do have a couple questions here, and just a reminder for folks, put in your questions and or raise your hand and I'll get those to you. Number one, when you were a few screens back selecting the livestock type, it looked like someone caught that equine was not one of those options, and that is something we do a lot of planning with horses. So I don't know if you have a way, like, is there a possibility to add things in here? Is there a surrogate in here? I wouldn't say there really is, but is there a way to add, or is what's in here what you get? Is there a process to add additional livestock types?
So unfortunately, Comet Farm is only as good as the data that we have. And so we do not have enough data on equine emissions currently. And there is also not a way to add additional animal types, similar to adding different crops. So some crops do have surrogate, but some are just not available due to limited data in different regions. And it does cost a significant amount of money and time to add animals on here. But when people suggest animals or ask about animals and crop types, we do keep those in mind. And so I'm currently writing that down. That way we can propose it for maybe at a COMET 3.0 or a next level edition, because we do have to find the funding for adding new categories on here. So unfortunately, equines are not available to account for in Comet Farm right now.
Okay, thanks. Another question we had come in, is there an option for feeding on unimproved pasture and or mixed pasture? I didn't see an option for general grass, hay in the feed categories.
Let's see if I can go to that animal characteristics page. And we're going to go to types of feed. So there is not we do have a grass section on here, but we would recommend trying to construct your mixture of what you are feeding them as close to what you are actually feeding them. So creating your own mixture in here based off of what is included in your pasture, based off of alfalfa or a mix of things, and then adding your percentage down in the bottom. So there is not a specific animal feed type on here for pasture. You would have to make the mixture yourself.
Okay, other questions from folks, please feel free to type those into the questions box. Okay, I'm seeing no other questions at this time for you, Hallie.
Alrighty, those are great questions. So I'm going to now show you guys the new baseline, a flexible baseline. So the report out that Comet Farm gives you is on a yearly average, under the assumption that you are going to continue the practice for 10 years. And so sometimes we've come across that users do different things per year for their animal management. So I'm going to show you how to create a flexible baseline. And I'm going to do this not in the dairy demo project. I'm going to create a new project and do this in the animal agriculture beef project. So I'm creating my new project, and this is going to show up at the very bottom here. And we've already selected our animal category as accounting category as animal agriculture. And again, the pop-ups will tell you the information where we got the data for our demo project. So again, our first task is to enter the location, and then we come to the animal types page where we select our animal categories. And for this one, we only have beef steer stalkers selected, but you can add as many as you want here. But I'm going to show you the setting the baseline period. So our baseline period, so this would be the business as usual period, and you would like to set your end baseline year as the last year before your management change. So for example, in the last demo project, they were switching to an anaerobic digester from a lagoon, and they did that. If they made that change in 2016, we would like to set our baseline end year in 2015. And I'm going to set baseline period here. So you don't have to use a new baseline period like this. You can continue on the legacy tool like I showed you in the original demonstration. I'm going to select OK. Now, if you notice, we have different activity years that are populated here. So this activity years is going to, you have the opportunity to change any management details within your baseline per year. So we know that numbers of, particularly with beef, they fluctuate yearly or monthly, depending on when the cattle move to the slaughterhouse. And so if you notice, just like in the last demonstration, whichever animal category you are working on will be highlighted in blue with a little green check mark. Same with the scenario, so we're currently on our baseline scenario, but also our activity years that we are working on are also highlighted with a little green check mark. So as you continue through your animal characteristic pages, similar to the last one, but we're going to get different sets of questions. If you notice our little our map here, our navigation map has grown and is showing different things. Your navigation map will vary depending on which animal category type you selected. So for beef cattle, you also have to put in your weight. But if you notice that we don't have all of our months are not populated with cattle, we only have them in the summer, fall months here. So you continue to enter your data similar just as before when we did not have a flexible baseline. You enter your feed type. And here you only have feed type. You're only entering data for the month that you've selected for the beef cattle. And I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the manure details page because all of our information is already entered here. And I'm going to select Save and Continue. So this pop-up, when you select Save and Continue, will let you know that you've defined all of your information for 2010. So that's only 1 year out of your 6-year baseline period that you've entered. So you have the opportunity, similar to the Cropland, to copy data that you've entered from this particular year to future years. That way you don't have to keep entering the same thing and just changing one little thing. So if, for example, you had entered that almost all of your years were the same management practice except for 2013, you could copy all of this data from the year that has this little blue check mark on it to the other years for this particular herd. If you had more than one herd here, so we only have this one USU4 herd here, if you had an additional herd for the same animal category, it would appear underneath it. And so you could copy data from 2010 to 2010 of that herd if you really wanted to as well. And so you can select Copy and Continue to move on. If you recall from the Cropland demo last week, any little box here that has another red box around it, that means that data has already been entered for that year. So if you were creating a new project, these boxes behind here would not be red here. They wouldn't have any color behind them because you wouldn't have entered any data for them. They have red boxes here because this is the Animal Ag Demo project and all the data is already pre-populated. So I can hit Copy and Continue to copy all the data from our 1 year that with the green check mark to any other year that we select in this box. I'm going to not copy it because it's already there. And I'm going to select No Thanks. And then you can, again, you're prompted with creating your new scenario, which we already have a new scenario here. It is our second herd here. And so if you notice that if you do choose the option of having a flexible baseline here, our future scenario or any additional scenarios that you create after the baseline will also have activity years. And these activity years are defined 10 years into the future after your defined baseline. So if you had decided your baseline ended in 2010, your activity years here would say 2011 to 2020. but ours ended in 2015, so we are prompted with activity years between 2016 and 2025. And so similar to the Cropland, when you go to the future scenario here, when you modify or when you enter the details for 1 year, or when you enter the details at first, you're only entering them for the year that you are currently selected on. So if we're on year 26 or 2016, so if I skip ahead to the last panel here so I can show you the copy feature. And so we've entered all of the data for 2016, you can select save and continue. And this lets you know that, again, all of your information is defined for this particular year. You can select copy. And now you have the opportunity, just like in the baseline, to copy information from this 1 year to additional years. But again, this is already populated with information because it's the demo project. So if you don't want to copy, you can select no thanks. And you have the option to create a whole new scenario, keep editing, or you can continue to the report here. Select OK. And just like in the dairy cattle, it breaks it down into source and subsource categories here. And you also have the opportunity to still download you have the opportunity to export your Excel file sheet of this table. And yeah, do we have any questions on the Animal Ag Flexible Baseline or the copy feature that I just demonstrated?
Yeah, so folks, please feel free to put your questions in the chat box and or raise your hand, and I'll get those questions to our presenter. Any questions out there? All right, Haley, I'm seeing none at this point.
Awesome. So with the last bit of, so I've shown the Animal Ag updates with the baseline, the flexible baseline, and you can now copy. And you also have the export a detailed report here, similar to the Cropland module. So I'm going to show you guys how to access and use the COMET Energy tool. So to access that, I'm going to go back to the home page. And oh, this is the window. So any new updates to COMET Farm, COMET Planner also has a separate one. This little window will appear to outline all of the new updates. And so the most recent one was the very end of September of this year. And so to access the COMET Energy tool, I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom and I'm going to click COMET Energy. And so just as a reminder, COMET Farm and COMET Planner are not a life cycle analysis tool. So when you make modifications, it's only taking into account the information that happened within the defined entity. So it's not taking into account the upstream and downstream emissions. It also does not take into account associated emissions. For example, COMET Farm does not account for the energy that it would take to heat up or cool down any milk from dairy cattle. So I would just like you guys to keep that in mind. Another thing that we created was the COMET Energy tool to help account for any reductions associated with fuel savings from associated with your change in management practices. So for example, if you were switching from an intensive till operation to a no-till operation, you would be using less fuel, and so you could account for that in the COMET Energy tool. So here, it's super simple. You also do not need an account to use the COMET Energy tool. You also cannot save any information that you have on COMET Energy to an account that you've already created. So it's just kind of a one-stop shop for a quick analysis on your fuel savings. So I'm going to plug in my zip code here in Fort Collins. And so then you enter your units that you'd like to report it in either pounds or metric tons. And then you can enter your project name. And then all you have to do is enter how many gallons of fuel or metric tons of fuel that you're using. So say we use 300 of these, number 2 diesel. And on the fly, this will calculate your greenhouse gas emissions associated with that. And so you can also enter how many gallons of propane you were using. Maybe you're using 52. And so that is all tabulated down in the bottom. And again, this number is given to you in total CO2 equivalent. And a summary of this report and how we got there is down at the bottom. So you can look at your emission coefficients for each of those source and subsource categories here. This also includes air pollutants for sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide. And so that is the COMET energy tool in a nutshell. Anyone have any questions on the COMET energy tool?
So just a reminder for folks, please put your questions in the questions box and or raise your hand and get those questions answered for you. Okay, I'm seeing none come in right now, Haley.
No? All right. So if we don't have any further questions on this, I can give a brief overview of our carbon farm planning curriculum that I briefly mentioned last time. And other than that, that is really all the demonstrations that Common Farm has, unless anyone is interested in seeing the forestry or agroforestry module as well. All right, so I will do a quick demonstration of, or a quick overview of our carbon farm planning curriculum. That is in beta testing now, but we are hoping to roll that out sometime either later in the year or early next year. Let's see. All right. So just as an introduction to the curriculum, I'm presenting this on behalf of Carbon Cycle Institute, again, NRCS, and the Comet Farm team. And the curriculum itself is a self-guided and web-based modular curriculum developed in partnership with Carbon Cycle Institute and the Comet Farm team under the leadership of USDA NRCS. And funding was provided by USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service through a cooperative agreement between CCI, the Carbon Cycle Institute, and Colorado State University, as well as the Jenna and Michael King Foundation. And so just as a little introduction on carbon farming, so the carbon farm planning curriculum leverages the NRCS conservation planning approach as a holistic systems approach to conservation farm planning, while viewing the landscape through a carbon lens, specifically to optimize carbon capture on working lands. And so with carbon as the central focus of planning, carbon farming has many benefits, many co-benefits, including increased productivity and economic stability, improvements to soil health, water quality and retention, and nutrient management, as well as promising rates of carbon sequestration that can be accounted for in the Comet Farm tools, which is a key component of climate change mitigation. And so our curriculum goals are to provide technical service providers, planners, and producers who are interested in carbon farm planning with the essential background, a framework, and a network of ongoing support for carbon farming. Within the curriculum, users will find tools, materials, and tutorials to facilitate the development of their own carbon farm plan. And so we have a module overview. There's 3 modules. And module 1 is going to be focused on providing an introduction to the carbon farm planning process and provides a background on carbon farming, principles of healthy soil, and the role of carbon in soil health, agriculture, and a component of climate change mitigation. Module 1 will also dive into, well, it does dive into a network, the network involved in developing a carbon farm plan and the ongoing support needed. Module 2. Module 2 explores the tools available to facilitate the planning process, including mapping tools to complement field visits on how to read the landscape and planning through a carbon lens, in addition to providing several examples of existing carbon farm plans developed by CCI, Carbon Cycle Institute, and Conservation District. Module 2 also provides an in-depth explanation and tutorial on how to use the COMET tools to estimate carbon sequestration and those greenhouse gas reductions associated with the different conservation scenarios. So in this module, we go into more depth and a more complicated COMET project than what I've presented already in the Cropland and the Ag demonstration today. Module 3 is going to conclude the curriculum by providing users with a Carbon Cycle Institute developed carbon farm planning guidance document and an explanation of the key components of the plan, including how to build out tables for your plan and how to create an implementation schedule. And so within the module, we've also created a set of tasks at the end of each module to help users assess their understanding of the materials presented in this module. So module 1 is a quick Google Forms questionnaire addressing the introduction or the background, and users who go through and then select view their score at the end of it will also view individualized feedback for each of their answer choices. Module 2 takes a more interactive approach, asking the users to, module 2 task takes a more interactive approach, asking the users to read a landscape to address the resource concerns using conservation practice standards, having navigated through the tools for planning pages of Module 2. And then finally, Module 3 is that self-paced and self-guided document that CCI created. So this would be the start of creating your own carbon farm plan. And so if anyone is interested in reviewing the initial steps to the carbon farm planning curriculum, we do have a curriculum feedback form that would help us to guide us in ways to improve and ensure that all components are visible and accessible to users, and provide us with a guidance on how to revise and enhance the curriculum to best meet the needs of existing and future carbon farm planners. Yep, so does anyone have any questions over the initial carbon farm planning curriculum that we're working to create?
So folks, just a reminder, any questions that you've got out there, maybe you can put in the questions box or raise your hand. You can ask directly. And so I'm not seeing any at the moment, but there was a comment you'd offered earlier, possibly showing the forestry and agroforestry models. And we did have someone who added a comment that they were interested in seeing that. If you've got a few minutes, perhaps those that stick around and watch that could do that. Others can log off if they've gotten everything they wanted to get from the agricultural farm model, the animal ag demo.
Yeah, I would be happy to give an agroforestry and forestry demonstration.
Okay, and while you pull that up, I do want to thank all those. If you are going to log off, thank you very much for joining us today for the animal ag demo part of this webinar training. And we hope that you've got some follow-up questions that can come direct to CTD, and or you'll find a lot of links and Haley's information on the website that you can contact direct, watch previous webinars that we've got on this topic, and explore that tool on your own so that you can make some progress with it. If requests come through, we can have additional webinars in the future, web-based trainings on this tool as folks start to get to use it more and they've got more detailed questions. A Q&A session could happen in the future if you send CTD a note and let us know. So with that, for those who are going to tune off, again, thank you so much, and thank you to our presenter. And for those who want to stick around and see the forestry and agroforestry model in action, give a little demo here, please stick around and we'll enjoy that here now. So I'll let you take it away.
Awesome, thank you. And again, if anyone else is leaving, on behalf of the COMET Farm team, we'd like to thank you guys for listening to our demonstration. So to demonstrate the agroforestry component, you're going to enter the COMET Farm site just like you would for the animal ag and cropland demo. And for a demonstration project, so what I'm about to show you guys, you also have access to by going to create demo project, and you can select agroforestry, which is what I'll show you first. So for this project, it's already selected down here, and we have agroforestry selected for our accounting activities. You could, in fact, account for agroforestry, animal ag, and cropland all together if you wanted to, but you would need to select all of those little check boxes. So I'm going to define my activity. And here for the demonstration project, this is located in California. And so for all the demo projects, again, the little pop-up window just gives you a little background information on the project. So here you're going to select your state and your county. And this ties the species types to the specific region. So you're going to select next. And again, a pop-up to help guide you through your demo project. And here you have a choice. You can enter your own information. If you were creating your own project, you can enter your own information. And here you would be entering your species group. And so this is just to narrow down your species type. So we could say cedars and your specific type of tree here. And then once you enter your, I guess I should go ahead and enter a tree here. Let's say a redwood. You can enter either your tree DBH or you can enter your age of the tree. And then we'll say this guy's 5 years old, and then you can enter your total number of trees here in your stand location. So you can select add species, and then it populates the section down below. So the agroforestry would be a great tool to use if you are creating or if you are trying to define a scenario for a windbreak or a riparian buffer zone. Unfortunately, I would like to point out that Comet Farm agroforestry and forestry components were not designed to create hedgerows, and you will find that you will not find any hedgerow or hedge species, shrub species defined in the agroforestry component. So if you were trying to account and create a surrogate for a hedgerow, we would suggest trying to find the smallest tree on here for your region and entering or entering a smaller DBH here. So this first selection is if you want to enter your own information, or you can use the defined scenarios that Comet Farm provides for you using the section here for riparian buffers or different windbreaks. So either a 1-row or a 3-row windbreak. So we'll say a 3-row windbreak, and it provides you species that you could use that are normally used in the area. So you can provide your age here. Maybe these guys are 5, and then enter your acreage for your scenario, and you can add your scenario here. And so your species that you are using here are defined based off of the given region. So depending on your state and county that you enter in the first page, these species and trees per acre will change here. And so once you, I guess if I go to the report, we're going to continue to the report. You notice there is not a current and future scenario or multiple scenarios in the agroforestry component. That is a limitation of the agroforestry and forestry. And so that could potentially be a COMET 3.0 feature of your management changes in there. But currently you can just enter stands. And so here, if we had more than one of the scenarios defined, then it would break it down in scenarios just like different animal categories or different parcels of land for the cropland. And here you can also extend each of the source and subsource categories, so where they're coming from. Your units are going to be the same as they are in cropland and animal ag, and that is presented in CO2 equivalent, but this is giving you 10-year averages, or this one, yeah, this projects it out to 2070, and then also provides your average yearly emissions, which is the highlighted green, which unlike the cropland and animal ag, normally the green is the change, but this is just providing your average yearly emissions associated with your agroforestry component. We can see if the graphical report is cooperating on this. And this would be by different scenarios. So if you'd also entered a 1-row windbreak, you can look at compare the differences there. Here we go. Working now. Unfortunately for the agroforestry, you cannot download your information, but you could print your information and then save it as a PDF if you would like to do that. But there is no export file like in the animal ag and cropland for this one. So any questions on the agroforestry component before I hop over to the forestry component?
Any questions from folks out there? Feel free to raise your hand if you want to ask a question direct. Type it in the questions box. Okay, seeing nothing come in right now, but I'll monitor it if you want to flip over to the forestry demo.
Awesome. Alrighty. All right, to go to the forestry one, we're also going to select create demo project. We're going to do forestry, so you guys can go through this exact same project that I'm going through, and notice that forestry is now selected there, and our demo project is selected on our project selection. I'm going to define my activities. And for the forestry accounting activity, you will actually create a parcel similar to just like you would in the cropland accounting activity. And so you can do this by adding a polygon. You can add a circle, or you can upload an S3 shaped file as a file here. So when you first, if you were creating a new project here, you would see a zoomed out version of the earth, and then you would type in the address where you'd like to create your parcels here. So here we have 3 stands. Each of these are highlighted here. Again, you can look at your soil types associated with the region by selecting soils in the top right corner next to hybrid. And if you'd like more information on each of those soil types, you can select view soil by click and click anywhere to get your soil texture type here. So once you are done defining your defining your parcels, you can select the little orange button in the top left corner. And just like all the other demo projects, the little windows give you a little background information. And here for each of the stands, so similar to the cropland, like a stand would be like the parcel for cropland. You can go between each of these by selecting the little drop-down menu above the mini map here. You'll know which one you're working on when it's got that yellow highlight around it. And so for this one, you would select your forest type, and you would decide, has it been a forest for a while? If you need more information on this. So if it's been a forest for the past 50 years, then you would select yes. If not, you would select other. And then you define the age. For more information, again, these little blue check marks will provide more information here. And so you provide the age that they are based off of when they were established, or you can provide your total volume, or you can provide the mercantile volume here. You would define your prescription, so whether or not it was a clear-cut harvesting or if it was grow only and there's no management activity, and select your activity years. So this would be defined as, so if this is set to clear-cut harvesting, you would define when that harvest event would occur, which would be 2040, and then you would select next. And so when you select next, that just means you finished defining information for your one stand. And so you can continue editing here to go to your other stands if you had more than one, or you can select next and continue straight to the report here. And the report is going to look very similar to the report for agroforestry in that it separates based off of every 10 years and provides the average yearly emissions associated with your management. I'd like to remind you again that these negative green numbers indicate an increase in carbon sequestration or a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. Again, these are all provided in CO2 equivalents. And just like before, you can extend each of these to view the subsource categories of where these values are coming from. There we go. And you also, oops, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, so going back just a little bit, There was a question or comment that said they didn't quite see how to define stand when you were entering that in.
Let's go back to the forestry management. Defining not the stand location, but the stand management.
Tal, perhaps you can add that into what exactly you were looking for, the stand type or the management.
The stand type. So defining the forest type, is that what the question's asking?
Yeah, so he's saying the stand itself, so the type.
Yeah, so this would be determined based off of whichever is the dominant species in the area.
Okay, and then there was also a comment saying that the polygon drawing tool doesn't appear to be working. Perhaps that's on his end, or do you have any tips on how to get that to work effectively?
Oh no. So like this polygon feature is not working. Is it specific to the forestry module, or were you working on the cropland module?
I think he said he's got it. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. No worries. I have those issues too.
Yeah, and Tal, if you are on a working audio and you'd prefer just to ask a few questions here, we're a pretty small group. You're more than welcome to do so. If you just raise your hand, I can unmute you if you have additional clarifications that you would like. Otherwise, I can let the presentation keep rolling. Okay. So, hold on one second. Okay, so Tal, see if your audio is working.
Hi.
Yeah, there you are.
I actually just kind of figured out what what I was working with here and how to navigate around the tool. So thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Let me know if you have any other questions.
Okay.
So I've demonstrated cropland last week, and then animal ag, agroforestry, and forestry this week. And then if you have any questions that pop up while you guys are playing around with the tool, you've got that need help widget in the bottom right corner. There are not as many solution articles associated with the agroforestry and forestry management. So if you can't find what you're looking for, again, you can contact us directly through that little help desk widget. But that is all that I have to present for you guys. So on behalf of the Comet Farm team and NRCS, we'd like to thank you for joining our webinar on our Comet tools.
Yeah, and thank you so much for your time today. Hallie, I know we all really appreciate you providing this demonstration for everyone. If folks have any final questions, please feel free to put that in the chat box. If you want to be able to, if you want Hallie to show you any last minute demos or answer any questions, please feel free to put those in. Otherwise, thanks again for your time today and for this demonstration. I know that I'll post up all the links that you've provided so far, along with recordings of these videos, so that folks can go back. If you've got some questions, it is very helpful to go back to these webinars. You can zip ahead to the part that you're looking for and review that demonstration part of the tool as needed. So this is a great resource, and we really appreciate your time. Once again, Hallie, and we hope that we can get questions to you in the future if that comes up through after everyone starts using it and anything comes up for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone who joined.
Okay, and we hope to see everyone at future webinars and future trainings as the topics are interesting to you. So thanks again, everyone, for joining the CTD's webinar series today, and we appreciate your time. Thank you so much.